Hand reading is one of the most powerful tools that you can learn as a poker player. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through an explanation of what it is, give you an example of how to use it, and then give you additional tools and resources so that if you want to learn this better, you can learn it for yourself and continue to improve over time so that you can dominate the tables. One of my favorite movie clips related to cards is this one from the first Austin Powers movie where he's sitting at a blackjack table with number 2 who has some kind of a laser eye contraption that can see what card is coming up next. Let's go ahead and run the clip and then we'll talk about it.
Do you mind if I join you?
Not at all. Game is blackjack, gentlemen. $10,000 minimum bet. King for you, sir, and a 3 for you. 17.
Hit me.
You have 17, sir.
I like to live dangerously.
4. 21. 5. I'll stay. I suggest you hit, sir.
I also like to live dangerously.
As you wish, sir. 20 beats your 5. I'm sorry, sir.
That clip is hilarious. I absolutely love it. But the reason I played it for you was not for the laugh. It was kind of to point out the scenario where if you have perfect information, you can make a play that maybe is non-standard. Normally in blackjack, if you have a 17, you're not going to hit it. But in this case, with perfect information, knowing that the 4 is coming, you can't go wrong. So no, we can't get perfect information by hand reading, but we can get better information, and better information leads to better decisions. Let's now talk about how hand reading works, and then we'll get into an example. I've heard hand reading described as like a funnel in multiple poker resources, and basically what you want to do is you want to start with a lot of information and funnel it down to a small amount of information. We're going to accomplish this by logically eliminating hands that don't make sense from our opponent's range. Now, if you've never seen a range before, here's an example. So this range chart basically gives an idea of the possible or potential hands that a poker player could have. If you're not thinking in terms of ranges already, that's step number 1. You've probably heard him say something like this. I hear it all the time. I folded because I put you on kings. I folded because I put you on aces, whatever it is. Like in their mind, you have one hand and it's this one hand. Now, often they're going to maybe make a correct fold, but not identify the correct hand. But I would say just as often when you're playing a very capable opponent, I've had people where I've had nowhere near that strong of a hand. I've been absolutely bluffing, and they say, I put you on X hand. And so they don't consider that I might have bluffs, that I might have flush draws or some kind of like a backdoor straight draw on the flop or whatever it is that I might be betting. They just said, oh, I put you on, and then folded to that specific hand. We don't want to think like that. We want to think in terms of ranges. So you want to give your opponent all the possible hands that make sense and then slowly start eliminating the hands that don't make sense until you get down to the most logical ones. Let's now go through an example hand and I can illustrate this a little bit better for you. This hand comes from vlog number 56. I have pocket jacks. I raised to $20. There's 2 callers and then the opponent in the small blind makes it $100. Now, the fact that we have a 3-bet pre-flop is going to narrow down the combinations immediately. This is probably one of the easier spots to hand read, which is why I chose this hand. Now, when you go to define his hand, we want to look at the rest of the table and say, what are the table dynamics? In this case, I opened. Multiple people called behind, so there's a lot of dead money on the table, which incentivizes more raising, more like attacking that dead money. But he's also out of position, which incentivizes less getting out of line. So there's kind of an interesting balance here. But the way he's going to play this one, we're going to expect him to have more strong hands than not. I've given him down to ace-10 suited, and that's not really playing around too much. I think you can see this opponent is capable, but let's say that he's a very aggressive opponent that really wants to attack often. Then I might start including more of the ace-5 suiteds and maybe some of the smaller suited connectors, some of that stuff. I think in this case, it's pretty safe to say that he's going to have a range along these lines where he's got a lot of strong premium pairs and some big Broadway overcards, especially of the suited variety. So now let's go to the flop and we'll see if we can narrow it down further. We go to the flop. after I make the call, and he continues for $210. Now with 3-9-5 on the board rainbow, what can he continue with? I would argue that he's going to continue with almost his entire range here, so this probably doesn't narrow his range a lot because he's going to be incentivized to continue. There's so much dead money out there, and this board isn't a really scary board. He's going to want to continue with all the pocket pairs for value. The overcards are going to be pretty content to continue just to try to take down this pot because there's plenty of money in there. And then if he happens to have a suited connector, again, it's going to probably continue as a bluff. So he bets. I'm going to go ahead and make the call because his range hasn't changed a lot, and because all of the unpaired overcards are going to be betting just as often as the paired ones. I'm not going to fold for one bet. So I make the call. Let's go to the turn. Now the turn comes down the 5 of spades, the board pairs, and he checks. So now we do get to eliminate some hands from his range. In this case, if he's thinking about what I might have, he might be slowing down in this position because I can have pocket 9s, I can have jacks, 10s, queens, kings. And so if he's not at the very top where he has like his aces or kings, this is maybe a card where he wants to slow down. Some of his unpaired hands are going to want to slow down in this position, and his lower pairs, like if he's holding pocket 10s, if he happens to be holding even pocket queens, based on the way I've played back at him, maybe he wants to pot control a little bit. So some of those hands make sense. The ones that don't make sense are things like pocket 9s, pocket kings, and pocket aces. So let's go ahead and remove hands like that from the range here. So now we're going to go to the river, which is the 8 of spades, and my opponent chooses to check again. It's an interesting card because hands that may have been incentivized on, say, the 8 of diamonds to bet, like pocket queens, are probably not now going to want to bet. So I think we can still leave in pocket queens. I think we can still leave in his potential to have the other pair of jacks or 10s. Things like that do make sense based on the line that's been taken so far. Now all the spade combinations, however, don't make sense anymore. Now that we've narrowed it further, we can look at this on the river and say, what can we really get value from? Possible that he has pocket 10s that we could get value from. Outside of that, there's not much. I don't think you're going to get a crying call from ace X. And so at this point, there's not really any value targets. I just check back and turn the jacks up. They end up being good. I think he probably had those ace X combos that we were talking about that we narrowed down. Otherwise, the other options are really pocket queens that are beating us, jacks, one combination that we would tie with, or pocket 10s. You're going to have situations that are more challenging than this. You're going to find spots where you recognize that you need to turn your hand into a bluff because they have so many hands that can't call you. Or you're going to realize that you need to make the call because they have so few hands that are beating you. Whatever it is, they're going to have a lot of bluffs in their range. When you use this tool to narrow down what's possible, you're going to get to the end result more accurately. This is going to allow you to make better decisions. And when you make better decisions on the river are the most consequential decisions you'll make, but you'll also have the most information on the hand because you've been able to narrow and narrow throughout multiple decision points. So the river is a really important spot to play, and this is probably the strongest tool you'll get for playing the river accurately. Now, if you want to take your game to the next level when it comes to hand reading, this is probably the greatest book I've found for learning hand reading. Now, this book is the Poker Workbook of Hand Reading. This isn't a sponsor or anything. This is just a book I've used. It's really good, by Split Suit Sweeney, and it doesn't have answers for you. Some people on the reviews for this book, they said, hey, I'm upset. This doesn't tell me what to do. It just gives me things to work through and then doesn't tell me if I did them right. Well, you're not supposed to do them right. It's to walk you through. It's to give you the tools you need to just practice. There is no like right or wrong necessarily. What you need to work through is how do I narrow? And just practice and practice and practice. The next step after that workbook would be getting into a group to review hands. So if you don't have a group of friends that you can talk poker with on a regular basis and discuss hands and get better, join the Discord down below. We talk hands on there on a regular basis. We break things down and just ask each other questions, talk through spots, and discuss, hey, was this a good decision? Should he have this? Should he not? What am I looking for value from? All those questions, you get to answer them over and over again in practice as a group to help you redefine what's possible that maybe you weren't considering. So getting in a group that will challenge you and stretch you is really important. Finally, there's an app that I use that I posted up on this screen. I use often. It's called Poker Cruncher. Now, it's like a $5, $10 app, something like that. But I think it's worth the money. What you can do with that is you can define your hand versus a range, your hand versus a hand, a range versus a range. It'll give you all kinds of neat tools for analyzing where you're at in a hand and analyzing what kind of equities are possible, what kind of hand strengths are possible, but you can do it on the fly. You're not talking about needing like a full solver to go through things and needing a laptop that really has some high computing power. You can just sit and do some simple stuff on your phone, and you'll learn an immense amount just by doing some range analysis with that simple $10 tool. Again, not a sponsor, just a tool that I use on a regular basis. Well, I hope this video has been helpful to you and that it benefits your game for the long run. If you have any questions, comments, feedback, leave them down below in the comment section. Thanks for being here and for hanging out, and I'll talk to you next time.
To the house, then I hit her to the sky, changed haters on a tirade.